Welcome to the Project Manage chapter. And that is the stupid name of the application that I came up with, or the name that I came up with. It's actually a clone of Trello that we're going to build, of course. So let's go ahead and build this screen, which basically just uses a background and then has a font here, a custom font that says Project Manage or Project Manage or Proj Manage, however you want to pronounce it. So basically it's a project management tool. That's the idea behind it. And we're going to build this screen for now. And this should be the splash screen. So the splash screen is usually displayed for 2 to 3 seconds, and then it moves over to the main activity or the login activity or whatever activity you want to display afterwards. So let's get started with this. Therefore, let's go ahead and create a new project. And I'm going to call this one Project Manage. So empty activity, Project Manage. Okay, just like that. And I think it doesn't have the E at the end, even then it would be more of a manage than a maneg. So let's go ahead and create that project. Once the project is loaded, let's go ahead and create a new activity. So I'm just gonna create a new activity, which is going to be an empty activity as well. And I'm just gonna give it the name Splash Activity. As we had no action bar in this activity, as you can see, we only display the image that we have here. I want to have the same design, of course. So let's go over to our resources folder. There in values in the styles XML, let's go ahead and create a new style. So I'm just gonna create this style called no action bar. So style, name app theme, no action bar. And what I want to have in this is an item called window action bar, set to false. And then another item called window no title, set to true. This will allow us, of course, to have no action bar and no title there at the top. So let's go ahead to our Android manifest, because here we have two activities now. We have the main activity and the splash activity. And I want those two to have the screen orientation of portrait. So Android screen orientation portrait. And the theme, at least for the splash activity, should be our new theme that we just created. So app theme no action bar. And then this intent filter that we had in the main activity is what I want to have for my splash activity. So this intent filter pretty much just sets the activity here, our splash activity, as the launcher activity and also as the main activity. So pretty much as the starting point of our application. Okay, so now if we start our application, it will go to the splash activity instead of going to the main activity. Now let's go to our activity splash and style it. So I don't want to use a constraint layout. I'm just going to use a basic linear layout. Keep it super simple. And inside of the linear layout, I just want to have a text view. So here, text view, which has the wrap content as the width, wrap content as the height. It's centered, so gravity should be center, as well as the text should be a text that we create. So let's go ahead and go to, well, actually we can just use the project app name. So add string app name. The text color, there I'm going to use white. So here add Android color / white. And then the text size, I'm gonna make it, well, the style is gonna be bold if it gives me the style first, but now text size. This one will be 70 SP, and that is maybe something that we want to define in a separate file as well. So let's go over to our project here and to our values. So we need a new value here, a new file, values resource file, and I'm going to call this one dimensions. So it's going to have all of our dimensions. So let's go ahead and create a new dimension in here. I'm just gonna call this one splash screen title text size, and I'm gonna set that value to 70 SP. All right, so this is our dimension. Now we can use it in our activity splash. So here I'm gonna go and say add diamond splash screen title text size. All right, and then let's close this text view. Now we can give it an ID just to be complete here, even though we probably won't need it. But in case we still want to use it later on, we will be able to access it via this identifier called TV app name. All right, that's going to have this design here, as you can see, Project Manage. It's just this white text right now. It's not perfectly positioned as I would like it. So we need to go back to the code and finalize our linear layout here as well. So we need to give it a layout height. Well, that's fine, match parent, but then the gravity should also be centered. Okay, and then finally, I'm also going to add a background here, and therefore we need, of course, an image. So of course we didn't copy any images in here, but that's what you can do by downloading the project assigned to this chapter, and then you can just download the whole thing and also find the splash background there. And in this case, I'm just gonna drag the PNG here to keep it simple. So I'm just gonna use one image, even though of course we should have the 6 different images for the different screen sizes, right? Okay, so here, this is the background, and I want to use that, of course, in my activity splash. So let's just add that, add drawable, and there we have our icy splash background. All right, let's look at the design once again. So you can see Project Manage here in our background. So let's also test this application. Actually, before we can test it, we should go to the splash activity and make some minor changes here, because we still have to set up a little bit so that we don't have the bar at the top. All right, and also so that we use our custom font, because currently if we look at our background here, you can see, or in this activity splash, you can see we're using a default font, not a special font that I would like to use. Okay, so let's go ahead and first of all set the window flag. So window set flags, and here I'm gonna use the window manager dot layout params flag underscore full screen, and another time. So you need to pass this twice, and now import window manager, of course, so that this works. Okay, so setting the flags hides the status bar and makes our splash activity full screen pretty much. Okay, so this is what these 2 or 3 lines here do. Okay, and then if you want to use a custom font, what you need to have is, of course, a folder where you have the font in. So new folder, asset folder. So I'm just gonna leave it as it is. So there we have our assets folder, and that's where you need to drag in the font that you want to use. Now, when it comes to fonts, there's this website called 1001fonts.com. There's also dafont.com and plenty of other font websites. The thing is, when you use a font, you have to be careful, because potentially you will have to buy the license to use it, depending on the font, of course. So in this case, I'm using this Carbon font, and it might not be the perfect font for this application, but it's good enough in my opinion, at least for these purposes that we're currently at. So if you want to use a custom font, then you can go to, for example, this website. You can select the font that you want to use. So in my case, I went for the free fonts for commercial use.html. So it's just a bunch of free fonts. You can see there are 5,000 fonts here. You can even decide which kind of style they should have. Should it be a headline, a sans serif, serif, and so forth. So I just went through, and on the 3rd page I found this Carbon Black, which I liked. And when you hover over it, it says free for commercial use. But even though, you still need to be careful. So once you have clicked on this, you can read through the details here. And here it says hypodermicfonts.com/carbon. That's where you can find information about license, because it says these fonts include a license that allows free commercial use. So sometimes referred to it as desktop license. This allows you to install the fonts on a computer and use them to create posters, web graphics, game graphics, t-shirts, videos, signs, logos, and more. Read the license agreement for details. So then this is interesting for us. If you'd like to embed these fonts in an app, ebook, on the web, or anything that's not covered by the desktop license agreement, visit the link below. You'll find distributors who offer different types of licenses, or you can contact me for help. Okay, so then you can check out this website, and actually I have it here already, and then you can go to the details about the license, right? And then font embedding in apps. If you're making an application and you're using my fonts to create a title or some other graphic elements, the regular desktop license is sufficient. Sometimes you need to include or encode the actual font file data inside the application. This requires an app license. There are two types of application licenses. So you have to have the license for the font, or you can try to find some other free, royalty-free fonts that you are allowed to use in your applications, okay? So this is not going to be relevant if you just test this on your phone and you're not distributing it anywhere, all right? No one's going to be bothered by this. But once you make money with it and you distribute it in the application or use it in your application and hundreds of thousands of people use your application, then it might be a different situation. So this person might find this font in your application, and then he will investigate whether you have a license or not, and potentially you would have then to pay fees. All right, so that's something that you have to keep in mind. In general, when you use stuff from the internet, always be sure that you are allowed to use it in your application, and especially that it's allowed to use commercially as well. All right, so at this point you can go ahead and download this font, or any font you like and you are allowed to use. So I'm just gonna, I just stored it in my Projet Manage folder. There you'll find the zip file, and inside of the zip file you will find those 4 files. So if you want to read more about terms and so forth, you can check this out. But other than that, you now have the Carbon BL-TTF. So what you need to do is you need to drag it into your project now. To be more specific, into the assets folder. So then you can copy it from here with either right click and copy, or with Control Z, and then go to the assets folder, click on it, and then Control V or right click paste. Okay, so then it will create this asset with a new directory. So it's going to store it inside of the project, Carbon BL-TTF. And now if you want to use that specific typeface or that specific font, you need to go to your Splash activity, or the activity in which you want to use it. So I'm just going to create a new typeface object, and it will be of type typeface. Okay, so then in order to create this typeface, you need to import it. All right, then typeface dot create from asset, and here you need to say where to find the file, and it's in our assets folder. This folder is called assets, right, by default. Then you enter the path. So in our case, it's directly in the parent folder, and it's called Carbon BL.TTF. Okay, so here, this name, you can see no underscore, nothing, just an empty space in between. It's still gonna understand it. Okay, so Carbon TTF or Carbon BL.TTF, and that is going to be the path for the asset. Now we can use that typeface. So you can go ahead and access the TV app name and use the typeface, or set the typeface to be the typeface that we prepared. So this one here, which of course is our font. So now it will use this font just for this one text. Okay, and there you already see why it was useful, to give it an ID. So this text view here. Okay, now let's test it and let's see what our application will look like. And there we are. So now that's how it looks. Projet Manage. And we have our splash screen. All right. So this was just the beginning of our application, of course, but we're gonna build it up step by step, even though probably when you would build this application yourself without going through this course, then you would not start with a splash screen, I'd guess. So I think this is something that you probably would add towards the end of the project, so to speak, because you first of all want, of course, to have all of the core features, which means the logging in functionality or register and login functionality, then storing any kind of data in the cloud and so forth. All right, but of course we're going to look into all of that. So see you in the next one.